The first-class cabin smelled faintly of citrus and jet fuel. Senator Maya Jefferson stood in the narrow aisle, boarding pass in hand, the polite smile on her face beginning to stiffen. The flight attendant, blonde, pressed uniform, sharp as a blade, blocked her way. "I'm sorry, ma'am. First class is full," she said. Her tone was honeyed, rehearsed, unyielding. Maya blinked. There must be a mistake. 3 AMI names on it. The attendant didn't look down at the boarding pass. That seat's already taken. Passengers were watching now. Phones tilted subtly upward. The man in 3A, white and middle-aged, looked up from his laptop, then quickly back down, pretending not to hear. Maya's pulse thudded. She could hear the engines spooling, the hum of air through vents. "I'm a U.S. Senator," she said quietly, not bragging, stating a fact. The attendant's smile didn't falter. "Then you should know how to follow instructions." It hit like a slap. For a moment, Maya couldn't breathe. She saw herself reflected in the polished metal overhead calm face, clenched jaw, centuries of defiance behind her eyes. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone whispered, "Is this really happening?" Then a man in a pilot's uniform appeared at the door, frowning. "What's the issue here?" The attendant straightened. "Security concern, Captain." Passenger refusing to comply. Maya felt the chill of disbelief turn into fire. "Security concern." Her fingers tightened on the boarding pass until it tore, and as 2 uniformed airport officers stepped into the aisle, every camera in first class began to record. Fade to black. The boarding line shuffled forward, a slow-moving river of passengers and impatience. Senator Maya Jefferson adjusted her carry-on strap, the leather creaking softly under her fingers. After 3 committee hearings and 1 terse phone call with the White House, all she wanted was an hour of quiet above the clouds. "Boarding Group I," the gate agent called. Maya stepped forward, offering her ticket. "Maya Jefferson, seat 3A. The agent scanned it, glanced briefly at her face, and nodded. "Welcome aboard, Senator." The title still carried wet sometimes armor, sometimes target. Inside the plane, cool recycled air brushed against her skin. She smiled faintly at the scent of brewed coffee and metal. The first-class cabin gleamed gray leather seats, polished armrests, passengers already absorbed in screens and small talk. Then she saw the attendant, blonde bun, tight smile, uniform crisp enough to cut. "Excuse me," Maya said softly. "I'm in 3A." The woman's hand shot up like a stop sign. "1 moment, please. That seat's occupied." Maya frowned. There must be a mistake. "No mistake," the attendant said, voice professional but cool. "Please step aside." The murmur of boarding passengers grew louder behind her. Maya felt the prickle of stares on her back. "Ma'am," she said evenly, "I have the confirmation right here." The attendant's eyes flicked toward the boarding pass, but didn't read it. "We'll need to verify." A man in a tailored suit behind Maya sighed loudly. "Can we move this along?" She turned slightly, forcing a smile. "Just a moment." When she faced forward again, the attendant had already spoken into her earpiece. Another crew member approached a younger man with wary eyes. "What's the issue?" he asked. "She's trying to sit in an occupied seat," the woman replied smoothly. Maya's heart stuttered. "That's not true." The young attendant hesitated, glancing between them. "Ma'am, can I see your ID?" She handed it over. "Senator Maya Jefferson, U.S. Senate, District of Maryland." He blinked. "You're, 1 moment." He turned to the woman. "Her name's on the manifest." But the senior attendant didn't move. "We'll handle it," she said, tight. "Please wait by the galley until we confirm." Passengers whispered. Someone lifted a phone. Maya's throat felt dry. "Is there a reason you're treating me like a security risk?" "Ma'am, no one said that," the attendant replied. "Please don't make a scene." Don't make a scene. She'd heard those words before in campaign meetings, in faculty lounges, at police checkpoints when she was younger. Her voice trembled, low but steady. "I am not making a scene. I'm asking for basic respect." "Ma'am, step aside," the younger attendant whispered. "Please, just for now. Let's de-escalate." Maya inhaled sharply, fighting the flush rising to her cheeks. The power imbalance was suffocatingly familiar. Smiles and rules as weapons. A uniformed officer appeared in the aisle. "Problem here," the senior attendant answered before Maya could speak. "Passenger refusing crew instructions. Possible disturbance." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us." Maya froze. "You can't be serious. It's for everyone's safety." Laughter somewhere behind her. The man in 3A looked away again. "I have done nothing wrong," Maya said, voice shaking now. The officer's tone softened slightly. "Let's step off the plane, talk it through." She stood still for one long, unbearable second. Cameras glinted in the corner of her vision. Her career's weight pressed on her shoulders. Every little girl who looked like her, watching what she would do. Finally, she nodded. Fine. As they escorted her down the aisle, whispers filled the cabin. Who is she? Some kind of politician. Crazy. At the door, she turned. You're making a mistake, she said to the attendant. The woman's smile returned, small and smug. I'm just doing my job. Outside, the terminal lights burned too bright. Maya's knees trembled as the officer guided her to a bench. Her phone buzzed, her aide calling. She didn't answer. Instead, she stared through the window as the plane she'd been supposed to board taxied away, its lights blinking against the dusk. And in that cold reflection, she saw it again, her own face, calm and furious all at once, the beginning of a storm. The next morning, Maya woke to the glow of her phone lighting the hotel room like a strobe. Missed calls. Dozens, hundreds, her chief of staff, her press secretary, her sister, and beneath them, a single text from her daughter, Mom, it's everywhere. She hesitated before opening the link. A video, her own voice, trembling yet firm. Is there a reason you're treating me like a security risk? The flight attendant's face froze in perfect clarity. Then, the officer's hand on her elbow, cut to gasps, cut to silence. Cut to Maya walking down the aisle. Music swelled in the background. Someone had edited it, turned it cinematic. She scrolled through the comments, heart sinking deeper with each one. Unbelievable. Still happening in 2025. She pulled the race card fast. That's Senator Jefferson. She handled it with class. Entitled Politician Gets What She Deserves. Her fingers trembled. She set the phone down like it was burning. The room phone rang. Senator. It was her communications director, Tanya, voice clipped with caffeine and panic. We're in full containment mode. CNN, MSNBC, even Fox picked it up. The hashtags trending worldwide. Hashtag Seat 3A. Maya sat up slowly. Seat 3A, she repeated. The number felt radioactive. Tanya continued. They're calling for statements. The airline issued a preliminary response. They're saying you refused to comply with crew instructions. We're drafting a counterstatement. But, there's also a second video. Maya's pulse quickened. What second video? The one the guy in 3A posted. It cuts out before security comes in, so it makes it look like you were the aggressor. It's got 10 million views already. Maya closed her eyes. 10 million strangers, dissecting her tone, her face, her right to exist. Schedule a press conference, she said finally, this afternoon. The press room at her Senate office was packed wall to wall. Reporters jostled for position, lenses glinting like predatory eyes. Tanya stood beside her at the podium, whispering, keep it calm, factual, and tight. Don't give them blood. Maya nodded, straightened her blazer, and stepped up to the mic. Flashbulbs exploded. I was denied the seat I was assigned, she began evenly. When I asked for clarification, I was treated as a threat. I did not raise my voice. I did not refuse instruction. I was humiliated because of who I am and what I look like. A ripple of murmurs. A man in the front row raised his hand. Senator Jefferson, the airline says you became verbally aggressive. How do you respond? She met his gaze. I responded the way any person would when accused of something untrue, with disbelief. But aggression is often what people call confidence when it comes from someone like me. Another question shouted from the back. Are you planning to sue? Her jaw tightened. I'm planning to tell the truth. That's what I've always done. The cameras zoomed in closer, hungry. Her hand trembled once on the podium, then steadied. When the conference ended, she slipped into her office, shutting the door. Silence filled the space like thick smoke. Tanya followed. That was powerful, Maya. You stayed composed. Maya sank into the leather chair. Composed, she repeated. Funny how that's the only way we're allowed to exist. Tanya hesitated, then said softly, you know they'll start digging. Old interviews, family, donors, they'll try to make you the issue. I know. You ready for that? She looked out the window. DC in motion, traffic pulsing, people scrolling. I was born ready, she said, though her voice betrayed exhaustion. That evening, the networks ran split screens, left, the flight video, right Maya at the podium, resolute, anchors debated tone, intent, racial optics. A white commentator said, if she weren't a senator, this would have been a non-issue. Another countered, that's precisely why it is an issue. Across the country, strangers argued her humanity like a trending topic. Meanwhile, her phone buzzed again. her sister, Camille, FaceTiming from Baltimore. Maya, you okay? Camille's voice cracked through the speaker. I'm managing. You shouldn't have to manage this alone. Maya smiled faintly. Comes with the job. Camille shook her head. No, it doesn't. It comes with their fear. For a moment, the senator wasn't a headline or a symbol, just a woman, tired, trying not to break. Later that night, she sat on her hotel balcony, laptop open to a blank document. She began typing notes, timeline of events, names, times. Each keystroke steadied her. They can twist stories. They can't twist the record. Her aide, Jordan, called. Senator, we got word the airline's releasing a formal statement in the morning. Read it to me. He sighed. It says, and I quote, we regret any misunderstanding that occurred during pre-flight boarding procedures. Safety protocols were followed. We are conducting an internal review. Maya exhaled through her nose. They just called racism a misunderstanding. Jordan's voice dropped. They're protecting themselves. They're protecting a lie. There was silence on the line, broken only by the hum of city traffic below her window. Finally, Jordan said, what are you going to do? Maya's eyes hardened. I'm going to make sure they can't bury this under PR language. She closed the laptop and stared at the skyline, the Capitol dome glowing faintly in the distance. She'd fought on the Senate floor for education, for healthcare, for reform. But this fight, this one was personal, and it was only beginning. Hours later, as she tried to sleep, a notification pinged from her phone. A journalist had tweeted, source close to airline says Senator Jefferson played the race card. Full interview tomorrow. Maya's heart clenched. Then, another tweet appeared beneath it, a photo of her being escorted off the plane, captioned simply, this is what dignity looks like under pressure. She stared at it for a long time. Outside, rain began tapping against the window, soft, relentless. The sound reminded her of applause, or maybe warning. She whispered to the empty room, let them talk. Then she turned off the light. By morning, the sky over Washington, D.C. looked bruised, gray clouds streaked with pale light. Maya sat at the kitchen counter of her townhouse, untouched coffee cooling beside her tablet. She'd watched the airline's press conference 3 times already. Each replay left a heavier ache in her chest. Thus spokesman Young, white, polished, stood before a branded backdrop, speaking with corporate precision. We regret any distress experienced by Senator Jefferson. However, our crew acted within safety guidelines and company policy. We are reviewing the situation internally and remain committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was the kind of apology that apologized for nothing. Tanya burst into the room, tablet in hand. They're doubling down, she said breathlessly. Media's eating it up. Half the outlets are quoting that line about safety guidelines. Maya rubbed her temples. They're calling bias a safety concern. It's brilliant, really. Cruel, but brilliant. Tanya dropped her bag on the table. We can't let that statement stand. We need to counter with something stronger. Maya glanced up. How strong? Legal strong. Maya's brows lifted. You're suggesting I sue an airline while sitting on the Senate Transportation Committee. Tanya crossed her arms. You didn't pick this fight, Maya. They did. And the longer you stay quiet, the more they paint you as unstable or angry. Maya finished quietly. The angry black woman, their favorite character. Tanya hesitated. You said it, not me. Maya leaned back, exhaling. Let's call Robert. If we're going down that road, I want counsel who doesn't flinch. Robert Fields, her longtime attorney, joined them an hour later in her office. His salt and pepper hair was cut short, his expression perpetually skeptical, the look of a man who'd seen too much of America's polite cruelty. They're playing the long game, Robert said, after watching the video clips. Delay, deflect, dilute. By the time their internal review ends, the news cycle will have moved on. Maya folded her hands. Not if I make it my mission to keep it alive. He gave a small nod. Then we start with a formal demand letter. You're not just a passenger, you're a public official. They'll have to respond differently. Tanya interjected. The public's divided. Half the comments are supportive, half are, well, vile. Robert scrolled through his tablet. She's playing victim, entitled, race-baiting politician. He sighed. Classic tactic, drown the truth in noise. Maya stared out the window, eyes tracing the distant dome of the Capitol. They're not just questioning what happened, they're questioning who I am. Robert leaned forward. Then remind them who that is. By mid-afternoon, they drafted the statement. Tanya read it aloud in her crisp reporter's cadence. I was denied my assigned seat. then removed from a flight under false pretenses. I have served this country for over a decade, fought for its values, and believe those values must extend to every passenger regardless of skin color. This is not just about me, it's about accountability, dignity, and the right to be treated as human. Maya nodded slowly. Release it. Within an hour, #accountability in the air was trending. Support poured in from activists, celebrities, and ordinary travelers who'd faced similar discrimination. But the backlash was louder. One talk show host sneered, "This is what happens when political correctness meets turbulence." Another smirked. Senator Jefferson's ego can't handle being told no. The narrative was a battlefield, and she was outnumbered. That evening, a news anchor's voice filled the background as Maya scrolled through emails. Sources close to the airline suggest the flight attendant feared for her safety. Reports claim Senator Jefferson's tone was intimidating. Maya's jaw clenched. Intimidating, she muttered. I asked for my seat, that's all. Tanya looked up from her laptop. We need to get ahead of this. They're shaping public memory. Maya shook her head slowly. No, let them talk for now. The truth will breathe soon enough. 2 days later, a new email arrived. Subject line from Anonymous at truthwatch.net. You should see this. Attached was a short video clip. Maya hesitated before clicking play. The footage was from a cabin camera, grainy, time-stamped. It showed her standing in the aisle, calm, composed, speaking with open hands. The audio caught the attendant saying, "You people always make things difficult." The phrase was faint but unmistakable. Maya's stomach dropped. My God. Robert replayed it, leaning closer. That's the smoking gun, Tanya whispered. If we leak this, it'll explode. Maya stared at the frozen frame, her own face in that humiliating moment, and behind her, passengers turning away, pretending not to hear. Don't leak it, she said finally. Both looked at her, stunned. What? Tanya said. Maya, this proves you're right. I know, Maya said, but if I'm the one who releases it, they'll accuse me of weaponizing race for politics. We need it to come from someone else. Robert nodded slowly. An independent journalist, maybe, someone credible. Exactly, Maya said. We fight clean, they won't. That night, Maya sat alone in her study, laptop open to a blank email draft. Her fingers hovered above the keys. She typed the journalist's name, Alina Brooks, known for investigative integrity, then attached the video she wrote for verification and truth. Do with it what you believe is right. And hit send. The hum of the city felt distant as she closed the laptop. For a long time, she simply sat there, the weight of silence pressing on her shoulders. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about revelation. The next morning, the story broke wide open. Breaking news, exclusive cabin footage reveals racial slur in Senator Jefferson airline incident. The clip ran on every network within hours. Reporters shouted questions outside her townhouse. Senator Jefferson, any comment on the new footage? Will you demand the attendant's firing? Do you feel vindicated? Maya paused at the door, facing the cameras. She took a breath. Vindication isn't the point, she said quietly. Accountability is. The microphones surged forward, hungry, but she didn't elaborate. She simply turned and walked toward her car, calm, unbent. The storm now behind her, but still echoing. That night, as thunder rolled across the DC skyline, Maya watched the replay one last time, not to relive it but to remember why she fought. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tanya, airline CEO, requesting meeting. Tomorrow morning, they're scared. Maya stared at the message, then typed back one word, good. Outside, lightning split the clouds in half, and for the first time since the flight, she smiled. The chamber was packed. Rows of cameras lined the back wall, their red recording lights blinking like patient eyes. Reporters filled the gallery, whispering as the hum of air conditioning and tension thickened the air. Maya Jefferson adjusted her blazer, her silver Senate pin gleaming beneath the lights. This wasn't just another committee hearing. This was the one, her hearing called to investigate racial bias and discrimination in air travel. She could feel the weight of history pressing against her ribs. A staffer leaned in. You ready, Senator? Maya exhaled slowly. No, she said, but I'm going to do it anyway. Across the room sat the airline executives, 4 of them all in dark suits. Their lead counsel, a tall man with slicked back hair, whispered something to the CEO, who nodded tightly. The same CEO who'd requested a private meeting just days earlier, then cancelled when the leaked footage went public. Now he was here under oath. The gavel struck. Subcommittee on Transportation Equity is now in session. Chairwoman Reyes announced. Today we address the incident involving Senator Maya Jefferson and Skyworld Airlines. This hearing will explore broader systemic issues of discrimination in public transit. The formality didn't mask the electricity in the room. Reyes nodded toward Maya. Senator Jefferson, thank you for being here. You may proceed with your opening statement. Maya rose, paper trembling slightly in her hand. Her voice, when it came, was low but sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. A week ago, I was denied a seat I paid for. I was told to step aside. I was treated as a threat because of how I look, and because someone decided I didn't belong in first class. What happened to me is not unique. It happens to people every day, without cameras, without headlines. The question before us is simple. How long will we keep pretending it's about misunderstanding when it's about bias? Silence. Even the cameras seemed to lean closer, she continued, her gaze sweeping across the executives. We talk about equity as if it's a slogan, but for some of us, it's survival. What happened at 30,000 feet isn't just a mistake, it's a mirror. A faint murmur of approval rippled through the audience. Reyes nodded. Thank you, Senator. We'll now hear from Mr. William Grayson, CEO of Skyworld Airlines. Grayson cleared his throat, posture stiff. First, let me say, we deeply regret what occurred. It was never our intention to cause offense. The crew acted based on perceived security concerns. Maya's head tilted slightly. Perceived by whom? Grayson hesitated. By trained professionals following protocol. And what exactly did they perceive, Mr. Grayson? He faltered. A disruption during boarding. Maya leaned forward. A disruption? You mean me showing my boarding pass? Grayson glanced at his counsel. We understand your frustration, Senator, but our crew must make judgment calls in real time. Judgment calls based on race. The room stirred. Cameras zoomed in. Grayson swallowed hard. We don't condone bias of any kind. Maya's tone sharpened. Yet your flight attendant said, you people always make things difficult. That's on video. He shifted. That was unacceptable language. And the employee has been placed on administrative leave pending review. Maya's voice cut through his corporate phrasing. Pending review. That's your answer to humiliation, to national embarrassment, to the kind of casual hatred that strips people of their dignity. Chairwoman Reyes banged the gavel softly. Senator, please allow the witness to respond. Maya nodded curtly. Of course. Grayson looked down at his notes, then back up. We are implementing new bias training across our fleet. She leaned back, eyes cold. Bias training doesn't fix what people refuse to see. After hours of questioning, the hearing broke for recess. Reporters swarmed the hall. Senator Jefferson, how do you think the hearing's going? Do you believe Skyworld's apology is sincere? Are you using this for political gain? Maya ignored them, walking briskly toward the private lounge. Inside, Tanya and Robert were waiting. That was fire. Tanya said, eyes bright. Twitter's melting down. Hashtag mirror in the sky is trending. Maya sank into a chair. Good. Maybe they'll finally look at themselves. Robert handed her a folder. We just got the airline's internal memo. A whistleblower leaked it. It proves management knew about prior bias complaints from the same attendant, 3 in the last year. Maya looked up sharply. 3. He nodded. Buried under customer dissatisfaction reports. Get that to the committee chair immediately. Robert smiled grimly. Already did. When the hearing reconvened, Chairwoman Reyes lifted a new document. Mr. Grayson, can you explain why your company failed to disclose multiple prior complaints against the employee in question? Grayson blinked, blindsided. I'm not aware of those, Maya interjected softly. Then maybe the problem isn't just the flight attendant. Maybe it's the system that protects her. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Grayson tried to recover. We handle all reports according to company procedure. Maya's tone was steel. Company procedure seems to mean protecting prejudice until it's caught on camera. He opened his mouth to respond, but the chair cut in. Mr. Grayson, please refrain from evasive language. You're under oath. For a long, breathless moment, no one spoke. The weight of accountability hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to break. After the hearing adjourned, Maya stood alone in the marble hallway. The noise had faded. The reporters had dispersed. Chairwoman Reyes approached quietly. You did good today, she said. Maya gave a tired smile. Sometimes I wonder if any of it changes anything. Reyes looked thoughtful. Change doesn't happen in hearings. It happens in hearts, after they've been forced to hear. Maya nodded slowly. Then maybe today was a start. Later that evening, the networks ran highlight reels. Clips of Maya's cross-examination went viral again, this time framed differently. Senator Jefferson dismantles airline CEO in discrimination, hearing a masterclass in composure and truth. But not everyone was cheering. Commentators on certain networks called her divisive. A political rival tweeted, "There she goes again, weaponizing victimhood for votes." Maya didn't respond. Instead, she sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop soft against her tired eyes. The inbox was overflowing, strangers writing thank you messages, people sharing their own stories of bias in airports, offices, schools. One email caught her attention. Subject: My mom said thank you. The body read she was the only black woman in her department for 12 years. They called her aggressive every time she spoke up. She watched your hearing and cried, said she finally felt seen. Maya read it twice. Then again, she closed her laptop, exhaling shakily. That was worth more than headlines. As midnight crept in, thunder echoed faintly outside her window, a low, distant reminder of the storm still raging beyond her control. She poured herself a glass of water and stood by the window, watching the city lights shimmer on wet pavement. Her reflection looked older tonight, tired, but unbroken. She whispered to it, "They wanted to make me small." Then, after a pause, "But they made me loud instead." The next morning, news broke that the Department of Transportation had opened a formal investigation into World Airlines. The ripple had become a wave. And for the first time since that humiliating day on the plane, Maya Jefferson allowed herself to believe maybe justice really could take flight. The morning air was thick with unease. Reporters camped outside the suburban house in Virginia, their microphones pointed toward the closed front door like weapons. Inside, Cheryl Watkins sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug that had gone cold an hour ago. Her phone buzzed constantly. Calls from unknown numbers, text alerts, social media mentions. The whole world suddenly knew her name, and they hated it. A headline blinked on her tablet: "Flight attendant at center of discrimination scandal identified." Her picture was everywhere, the moment frozen on camera when she'd said those words, "You people always make things difficult." She stared at the image until it blurred. She didn't remember saying it. Not exactly. At least not like that. But maybe she had. Maybe the heat of the moment had peeled back something ugly she'd never meant to show. A knock at the door jolted her. Her attorney, Michael Crane, stepped inside. Sharp suit, tired eyes. "You look awful," he said, not unkindly. "I feel worse." He sat opposite her, dropping a stack of papers on the table. "They're offering a statement opportunity, an exclusive. You tell your side before the hearing resumes." Cheryl laughed bitterly. "My side? Nobody wants my side." "Actually, they do," Crane said quietly. "They want a villain, but if you play it right, they might see a person instead." She rubbed her temples. "You think people care about nuance? They already decided I'm the devil in a scarf." Crane sighed. "Then stop letting them decide. Tell the truth, all of it." She looked up. "Even the parts that make me look worse, especially those." Later that afternoon, Cheryl sat in a studio chair, the makeup artist dabbing foundation under her tired eyes. Across from her, journalist Renee Lowell.com, precise, dangerous in her civility, smiled for the cameras. The red light blinked on. "Ms. Watkins," Renee began, "thank you for agreeing to speak. Millions have seen the footage of your altercation with Senator Jefferson. What do you want to say to them?" Cheryl hesitated, the words catching in her throat. "I want to say I'm sorry." Her voice cracked slightly, "Not just for what I said, but for how I made her feel. I lost my temper. I let stress and judgment cloud my professionalism." Renee tilted her head. "You said, you people always make things difficult. What did you mean by that?" Cheryl swallowed. The question she'd dreaded. "I've asked myself that 1,000 times. The truth, I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but that doesn't matter. It sounded racist because it was. I was frustrated. I said something ugly, and I can't take it back." Renee didn't blink. "Some argue frustration doesn't excuse prejudice." Cheryl nodded. "It doesn't. But frustration can reveal what's already hiding inside you. I thought I was better than that. Turns out I had blind spots the size of an airplane." The camera zoomed in on her face. No makeup could hide the guilt etched in her eyes. After the interview aired, reaction online was immediate and divided. "She's only sorry because she got caught. At least she admitted it." That's more honesty than most. Apology tour to save her job. Typical, but beneath the noise, something else stirred. A few voices asking harder questions. What kind of system trains people to fear passengers who look a certain way? How many Cheryl Watkins are out there? Just one bad day away from exposure. 2 days later, Cheryl received a subpoena. She would testify before the Senate subcommittee, the same one where Senator Jefferson had spoken. The morning of the hearing, she stood in front of the mirror, her uniform gone, replaced by a simple navy dress. For years, she'd taken pride in her wings pin, the symbol of authority, grace, and service. Now it sat in a drawer, gathering dust. Crane adjusted her papers. Stay calm. Don't defend what can't be defended. Speak like someone who's trying to understand, not justify. Cheryl nodded weakly. Understanding doesn't undo damage. No, he said softly, but it can stop more from happening. The room was full again. Reporters whispered, cameras flashed, and the same electricity that had charged Maya Jefferson's testimony now buzzed around. Cheryl, Chairwoman Reyes, gavelled the hearing to order. Ms. Watkins, thank you for appearing voluntarily. You may proceed. Cheryl rose, hands trembling. I've been a flight attendant for 17 years. I've handled medical emergencies, panicked passengers, even mid-air turbulence that made me think we'd never land. But nothing has shaken me like the past 2 weeks. I made a mistake, a big one. I let bias, the kind I never thought I had, slip into my words, and those words hurt someone who deserved respect, not humiliation. She paused, eyes wet. When I said, you people, I wasn't thinking about history or stereotypes, but that's exactly what those words carry, centuries of them, and I used them like a weapon, even if I didn't mean to. I have to live with that. The room was silent, she continued, voice shaking but steady. I've had passengers treat me terribly. I've been called names, screamed at, even shoved. Over the years, I built walls, invisible ones, to protect myself. I started seeing people as categories instead of individuals. That's not an excuse. That's the infection I caught from working in a world that still divides people by comfort, class, and color. A murmur rippled through the audience. Maya, sitting quietly on the committee dais, watched intently. No anger, just an unreadable stillness. Chairwoman Reyes leaned forward. Ms. Watkins, what would you say to Senator Jefferson right now if given the chance? Cheryl turned toward her. I'd say, I'm sorry for seeing you as a problem when you were just a person. I'd say I was wrong, and I'd thank you for holding up a mirror I was too afraid to face. Maya met her gaze for the first time. Their eyes locked, a flash of recognition, grief, and something like reluctant empathy. Maya spoke softly. Apology doesn't erase pain, but truth has power. Thank you for speaking it. Cheryl nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I wish I'd seen that power sooner. After the hearing, the hallway swelled with reporters again, but this time, Cheryl didn't run. A journalist asked, Ms. Watkins, do you think you deserve forgiveness? She thought about it for a long moment. No, she said quietly, but I'll spend the rest of my life earning it anyway. That night, Maya sat alone in her office, watching the replay on her screen. She didn't expect to feel moved, but she did, not because Cheryl's words fixed anything but because they proved something. She'd nearly stopped believing that people could still learn, still break open, still change. Tanya walked in holding 2 coffees. You see her testimony? Maya nodded. Yeah. Tanya hesitated. You think she meant it? Maya stared at the screen for a long time before answering. I think she finally heard herself. Outside, the world kept talking, debating, judging, spinning the story, but in a quiet pocket of that storm, 2 women, one who had been humiliated, one who had humiliated had done something rare. They had both faced the mirror, and for the first time, neither looked away. The morning air was thick with unease. Reporters camped outside the suburban house in Virginia, their microphones pointed toward the closed front door like weapons. Inside, Cheryl Watkins sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a chipped mug that had gone cold an hour ago. Her phone buzzed constantly. Calls from unknown numbers, text alerts, social media mentions. The whole world suddenly knew her name, and they hated it. A headline blinked on her tablet. Flight attendant at center of discrimination scandal identified. Her picture was everywhere. The moment frozen on camera when she'd said those words, you people always make things difficult. She stared at the image until it blurred. She didn't remember saying it. Not exactly. At least not like that. But maybe she had. Maybe the heat of the moment had peeled back something ugly she'd never meant to show. A knock at the door jolted her. Her attorney, Michael Crane, stepped inside. Sharp suit, tired eyes. "You look awful," he said, not unkindly. "I feel worse." He sat opposite her, dropping a stack of papers on the table. "They're offering a statement opportunity, an exclusive. You tell your side before the hearing resumes." Cheryl laughed bitterly. "My side? Nobody wants my side." "Actually, they do," Crane said quietly. "They want a villain, but if you play it right, they might see a person instead." She rubbed her temples. "You think people care about nuance? They already decided I'm the devil in a scarf." Crane sighed. "Then stop letting them decide. Tell the truth, all of it." She looked up. "Even the parts that make me look worse, especially those." Later that afternoon, Cheryl sat in a studio chair, the makeup artist dabbing foundation under her tired eyes. Across from her, journalist ReneeLowell.com, precise, dangerous in her civility, smiled for the cameras. The red light blinked on. "Ms. Watkins," Renee began, "thank you for agreeing to speak. Millions have seen the footage of your altercation with Senator Jefferson. What do you want to say to them?" Cheryl hesitated, the words catching in her throat. "I want to say I'm sorry." Her voice cracked slightly, "not just for what I said, but for how I made her feel. I lost my temper. I let stress and judgment cloud my professionalism." Renee tilted her head. "You said, you people always make things difficult. What did you mean by that?" Cheryl swallowed, the question she dreaded. "I've asked myself that 1,000 times. The truth, I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but that doesn't matter. It sounded racist because it was. I was frustrated. I said something ugly, and I can't take it back." Renee didn't blink. "Some argue frustration doesn't excuse prejudice." Cheryl nodded. "It doesn't. But frustration can reveal what's already hiding inside you. I thought I was better than that. Turns out I had blind spots the size of an airplane." The camera zoomed in on her face. No makeup could hide the guilt etched in her eyes. After the interview aired, reaction online was immediate and divided. "She's only sorry because she got caught. At least she admitted it. That's more honesty than most." Apology tour to save her job. Typical, but beneath the noise, something else stirred. A few voices asking harder questions. What kind of system trains people to fear passengers who look a certain way? How many Cheryl Watkins are out there? Just one bad day away from exposure. 2 days later, Cheryl received a subpoena. She would testify before the Senate subcommittee, the same one where Senator Jefferson had spoken. The morning of the hearing, she stood in front of the mirror, her uniform gone, replaced by a simple navy dress. For years, she'd taken pride in her wings pin, the symbol of authority, grace, and service. Now it sat in a drawer, gathering dust. Crane adjusted her papers. "Stay calm. Don't defend what can't be defended. Speak like someone who's trying to understand, not justify." Cheryl nodded weakly. "Understanding doesn't undo damage." "No," he said softly, "but it can stop more from happening." The room was full again. Reporters whispered, cameras flashed, and the same electricity that had charged Maya Jefferson's testimony now buzzed around. Cheryl, Chairwoman Reyes, gavelled the hearing to order. "Ms. Watkins, thank you for appearing voluntarily. You may proceed." Cheryl rose, hands trembling. "I've been a flight attendant for 17 years. I've handled medical emergencies, panicked passengers, even mid-air turbulence that made me think we'd never land. But nothing has shaken me like the past 2 weeks. I made a mistake, a big one. I let bias, the kind I never thought I had, slip into my words, and those words hurt someone who deserved respect, not humiliation." She paused, eyes wet. "When I said, 'you people,' I wasn't thinking about history or stereotypes. But that's exactly what those words carry, centuries of them, and I used them like a weapon, even if I didn't mean to. I have to live with that." The room was silent. She continued, voice shaking but steady. "I've had passengers treat me terribly. I've been called names, screamed at, even shoved. Over the years, I built walls, invisible ones, to protect myself. I started seeing people as categories instead of individuals. That's not an excuse. That's the infection I caught from working in a world that still divides people by comfort, class, and color." A murmur rippled through the audience. Maya, sitting quietly on the committee dais, watched intently. No anger, just an unreadable stillness. Chairwoman Reyes leaned forward. "Ms. Watkins, What would you say to Senator Jefferson right now if given the chance? Cheryl turned toward her. I'd say, I'm sorry for seeing you as a problem when you were just a person. I'd say I was wrong. And I'd thank you for holding up a mirror I was too afraid to face. Maya met her gaze for the first time. Their eyes locked, a flash of recognition, grief, and something like reluctant empathy. Maya spoke softly. Apology doesn't erase pain, but truth has power. Thank you for speaking it. Cheryl nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I wish I'd seen that power sooner. After the hearing, the hallway swelled with reporters again. But this time, Cheryl didn't run. A journalist asked, Ms. Watkins, do you think you deserve forgiveness? She thought about it for a long moment. No, she said quietly, but I'll spend the rest of my life earning it anyway. That night, Maya sat alone in her office, watching the replay on her screen. She didn't expect to feel moved, but she did, not because Cheryl's words fixed anything, but because they proved something. She'd nearly stopped believing that people could still learn, still break open, still change. Tanya walked in holding 2 coffees. You see her testimony? Maya nodded. Yeah. Tanya hesitated. You think she meant it? Maya stared at the screen for a long time before answering. I think she finally heard herself. Outside, the world kept talking, debating, judging, spinning the story. But in a quiet pocket of that storm, 2 women, one who had been humiliated, one who had humiliated, had done something rare. They had both faced the mirror, and for the first time, neither looked away. The morning after Cheryl's testimony, the country was split right down the middle. TV screens across America replayed her words on a loop, the trembling apology, the tear, the steady voice saying, that's the infection I caught. Some heard remorse, others heard manipulation. And online, the battle raged like wildfire. Finally, someone owning up to their bias, respect, she's playing victim, always the same story. You don't cry your way out of racism. If Senator Jefferson can forgive her, so can we. No forgiveness, not now, not ever. By noon, hashtags had replaced headlines. #ForgiveCheryl trended beside #FireCherylForever. In Senator Maya Jefferson's office. The tension was thick enough to touch. Tanya leaned over the laptop, scrolling furiously. You've got 20 new interview requests, 3 op-ed offers, and 1 late-night host wants you on to discuss the human side of reconciliation. Maya sighed. The human side, that's code for entertain us while we pretend to care. Tanya looked up. You really think she meant it? Maya paused. I think she meant something. Whether it was regret or fear, I'm still figuring that out. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She almost ignored it but answered anyway. A woman's voice came through, shaky but familiar. Senator Jefferson. It's Cheryl. Maya froze. How did you get this number? I asked my lawyer to reach out through official channels. I just wanted to thank you for not tearing me apart when you could have. Maya's tone was guarded. You already tore yourself apart, Ms. Watkins. I just stood there. Silence on the other end. Then Cheryl whispered, I don't expect forgiveness, but I do want to help make this right. Maya's voice softened, just slightly. Then listen. Don't talk. Listen to what's coming next. She hung up by evening. The networks had moved beyond apology to analysis. CNN played side-by-side clips, Cheryl's tearful confession, and Maya's steady gaze. Fox News cut the footage differently, isolating Cheryl's phrase, I've been treated terribly too, as if to level the scales. A panel of experts debated compassion versus consequence. Everyone talked about the women, but few talked to them. Meanwhile, in living rooms, offices, and classrooms, America picked sides. At a coffee shop in Chicago, 2 young women argued quietly at a corner table. She apologized. One said, people mess up, you want them to change, then punish them when they try. The other shook her head. You can't just say sorry after humiliating someone on camera. That apology doesn't erase what she represents. A man at the next table muttered, it's always about race with you people. The words landed heavy. The whole room went silent. Exactly, the woman replied sharply. That's the problem. That same day, in a pilot's lounge at JFK Airport, a group of flight attendants watched the news feed. Cheryl made us look bad. One muttered, we deal with stress every day. You don't snap like that. Another shrugged. You think it's that simple. The company pushes you until you break. She just broke on camera. An older attendant, quiet until now, sipped her coffee. The system breaks all of us, eventually, some in silence, some in shame. At a school in Atlanta, a group of students watched the hearing footage for a class discussion on ethics and race. A boy raised his hand. "Why's everyone so mad?" She said. "Sorry," a girl beside him answered. "Because we always have to say sorry first. And when they finally do, it's called bravery." The teacher didn't speak for a moment. The silence said enough. That night, Maya appeared on a national interview. The host leaned forward with the practiced sincerity of primetime empathy. "Senator Jefferson, you've become a symbol of grace under pressure. The public wants to know, have you forgiven Cheryl Watkins?" Maya didn't flinch. "Forgiveness isn't a photo op. It's a process. And it's not about her. It's about what we do with what her words exposed." The host smiled thinly. "So you're saying you might forgive her?" Maya's tone cut through the room. "I'm saying I don't owe her forgiveness to prove I'm human." The studio fell silent. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens. Maya continued, her voice calm but weighted. "This isn't about one woman's mistake. It's about the quiet policies and subtle prejudices that make that mistake possible every single day. You can't reform hearts if you don't reform systems." At the same time, Cheryl watched the interview alone from her dark living room. The flickering screen illuminated her face, pale and drawn. When Maya's words landed, "You can't reform hearts if you don't reform systems," Cheryl whispered to herself. "Then let me help change it." Her phone buzzed. A message from her union representative. "The airline wants you to make a joint statement with Senator Jefferson." Interested, Cheryl hesitated. Every instinct screamed no, that it would just make things worse. But deep down, something heavier whispered yes. If she didn't speak now, the story would end with outrage, not change. By morning, the news broke. Disgraced flight attendant and Senator Jefferson to appear together in unity statement. The public erupted again. "This is performative nonsense." "Good for them. Time for healing." "I'll believe it when I see it." "Keep your unity. We want accountability." The line between justice and redemption blurred until no one could see where one ended and the other began. But Maya's office, Tanya looked uneasy. "You're sure about this?" "No," Maya admitted, "but maybe it's the only way to shift the conversation. People are fighting about individuals. I want them to start fighting about institutions." Tanya frowned. "And you think standing beside the woman who humiliated you is how we do that?" Maya looked out the window, where protesters held signs on both sides of the issue. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "you stand next to someone not because they deserve it, but because the world needs to see what standing looks like." Later that afternoon, Cheryl met Maya at a private conference room ahead of the public statement. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Cheryl whispered, "Thank you for agreeing to this." Maya replied evenly, "Don't thank me, just mean it." Cheryl nodded, eyes lowered. "I do." Maya studied her, the trembling hands, the hollow eyes, the exhaustion of someone who had been living inside a storm she helped create. "Then, let's make sure this isn't just noise," Maya said. "If we do this, we do it right. No rehearsed lines, no PR spin." Cheryl met her gaze, honest, raw, real. "For once," Maya murmured, "that would be a change." The air in the conference room was dense, a mixture of camera heat, tension, and perfume meant to mask nerves. Rows of reporters filled every seat. Microphones jutted forward like bayonets. The world was watching. At the podium stood Senator Maya Jefferson, composed as ever, her dark suit immaculate under the glare of the lights. Beside her, Cheryl Watkins looked smaller than anyone remembered, her eyes heavy, her posture uncertain, as if she were trying to disappear and atone at the same time. The buzz of whispered commentary quieted when Maya approached the mic. "Good afternoon." Her voice carried calm authority. "We stand here today not because everything is resolved, but because it isn't. 2 weeks ago, a moment on a plane became a mirror for something much larger, a system that keeps repeating the same mistakes." She glanced toward Cheryl but didn't smile. "I was humiliated that day," Maya continued, "but humiliation wasn't new to me. It was just public this time. What matters isn't how I felt, it's why it happened, and what it revealed." She stepped aside. The press leaned forward. Cameras clicked. Cheryl approached the microphone, clutching a folded piece of paper she'd rewritten a dozen times. Her hand trembled. "I want to start by saying I'm not here for sympathy," she said quietly. "I'm here because I caused harm, not by accident, but by ignorance. And ignorance, when backed by power, is dangerous." Murmurs rippled through the room. Cheryl took a shaky breath and continued. "When I told Senator Jefferson she couldn't sit in first class, I told myself it was about a seating mix-up, but deep down, I know there was something else. a bias I never wanted to admit I had. That moment wasn't just about me losing control. It was about years of small judgments I let pile up until they turned into something cruel. She glanced at Maya, whose expression remained unreadable. I've spent the last 2 weeks reading messages from strangers, some full of hate, some of forgiveness, and what I've learned is that people like me are part of a larger problem. We think racism is about monsters and extremists. It's not, it's about good people who refuse to see their own shadows. The words hung heavy in the air. A few reporters lowered their cameras, momentarily disarmed. Cheryl's voice faltered. I don't expect to be redeemed, but if my mistake can spark a real change, then I'll face whatever comes. Maya stepped back up beside her. The two women stood shoulder to shoulder, one a symbol of power, the other of reckoning. A reporter from the Washington Globe raised his hand. Senator Jefferson, do you believe this joint statement is enough? Or is this just optics? Maya looked directly at him. Optics are what started this. Truth is what ends it. Another voice called out, do you forgive her? The question cut through the room like glass. All eyes turned to Maya. She exhaled slowly, her jaw tight. Forgiveness, she said, is outside. Cameras waited. The nation waited. Two women stood on opposite sides of a moral earthquake, about to face it together. Maya took a deep breath. Cheryl did the same. Somewhere between them lay the fault line of America's conscience, fragile, trembling, ready to crack. And when the doors opened to the press conference, the roar of the crowd sounded less like applause, and more like judgment waiting to be decided. At first, it felt like momentum. The press conference had barely ended when hashtags exploded. Hashtag accountability now. Hashtag fly with respect. Hashtag Maya speaks. For 48 hours, it seemed like change might actually take hold. But then, as it always does, the internet turned. The first signs came quietly. A sarcastic meme here, a mocking headline there. Then the tone shifted, sharp and venomous. Fake tears, fake justice, to privileged women milking drama for followers. If roles were reversed, would anyone care? Comment sections filled with bile. Pundits on late-night panels laughed off the issue as another cycle of performative outrage. By morning, a new hashtag had replaced the old ones, #FlightFraud. In her office, Maya watched the chaos unfold across multiple screens. Tanya scrolled through the feed, jaw tight. Bots are amplifying it, she said. Half of these accounts were created last night. Half, Maya repeated, and the other half, real people. Maya closed her laptop slowly. That's what scares me. The messages were relentless. Doctored videos making Maya appear condescending, fabricated leaks of her campaign donations, false claims that the incident on the plane was staged. Even Cheryl wasn't spared. Her photo at the community center had been turned into cruel memes, captions calling her the sympathy flight attendant or white guilt Barbie. By noon, both women had become caricatures. The story had mutated, no longer about race or justice, but about them. Home. Cheryl sat on her couch, scrolling through her phone with trembling hands. Every notification was another knife. You ruined your own life. Deal with it. Go cry to your liberal senator friend. Attention seeker, pretending to be sorry. Her teenage daughter, Emily, stood in the doorway, voice small. Mom, don't read that stuff. I have to, Cheryl whispered. I need to know what they're saying. No, you don't, Emily said. You already know. They hate you. Cheryl dropped the phone, tears sliding silently down her face. I thought being honest would help. Emily hugged her. It helped someone, Mom. Just not them. Outside, a TV van idled on the street. Cameras waited, hoping for a glimpse of a breakdown they could sell. Back in Washington, a conservative news host smirked into the camera. Let's talk about Senator Maya Jefferson, the self-proclaimed face of modern She forgives the woman who wronged her, then turns around and calls for corporate oversight. Sounds like power theater to me. Clips from the press conference played out of context. The part where Maya said, forgiveness is personal, cut right before she added, accountability is public. The audience jeered. By nightfall, her approval rating had dipped 10 points. Campaign donors began to waver. Her communications director, Elena, burst into her office. We're losing control of the narrative. Maya didn't look up. That's because it was never ours to control. You could issue a follow-up statement. No, Maya said. The more we talk, the more they twist. The first letter arrived 2 days later, handwritten. No return address. Stay in your lane, Senator. You made enough noise already. Then came another next flight. maybe you won't land safely. Tanya urged her to contact the FBI. Maya agreed, reluctantly, but the fear wasn't what unsettled her, it was the predictability. She'd seen this before. Whenever truth gained traction, violence wasn't far behind. That night, she couldn't sleep. The city hummed outside, restless, indifferent. She stood by the window, replaying every moment of the flight in her head, wondering if she'd done the right thing by making it public at all. Was this how progress always felt, like falling backward after you'd barely stood up? Days later, Cheryl requested to meet Maya privately. Against her team's advice, Maya agreed. They met in a quiet cafe, both wearing sunglasses and hats, like fugitives from their own story. You look tired, Maya said. Cheryl laughed weakly. The internet doesn't sleep. Neither woman touched her coffee. I wanted to tell you, Cheryl began. They came after my daughter. Maya froze. What do you mean? Messages, at her school, online. They called her names, said her mom's a liar. She's 16, Maya. Maya's jaw clenched. I'm sorry. Cheryl shook her head. Don't be, you didn't cause this. I did, but I thought, maybe if I apologized, people would see my humanity. Turns out, they just saw weakness. Humanity isn't weakness, Maya said softly. Tell that to the comment section. They sat in silence for a long time. Two women, once enemies, now bound by a shared exhaustion. Before leaving, Cheryl said quietly, I used to think racism was about hate. Now I think it's about fear. Fear of losing the version of yourself that feels innocent. Maya nodded, and power always protects innocence, especially the fake kind. In the weeks that followed, the country split further. Protests erupted again, not in Maya's defense, but in outrage at her agenda. Crowds chanted outside the Capitol, no more race games. Counter-protests clashed nearby, shouting justice still matters. News anchors fed the fire, each side claiming the other was weaponizing victimhood. The incident on the plane, once a flashpoint for reflection, had devolved into a partisan symbol, stripped of nuance, swallowed by tribalism. One evening, Tanya found Maya sitting alone in her darkened office, the glow of her laptop casting harsh light on her face. Turn it off, Tanya said gently. You've done enough, have I? Maya asked, or did I just feed the machine? Tanya sat across from her. You exposed a truth, Maya, that's never clean. Maya rubbed her temples. Truth should heal. Sometimes it wounds first. They sat in silence. Outside, thunder rolled the first rain in weeks. Meanwhile, Cheryl recorded a short video from her kitchen. No makeup, no lighting, no script. I don't care if you hate me, she said. But if you watched my story and learned nothing, then I failed again. Racism isn't a headline, it's a reflex, and until we admit we have it, it'll keep flying right over our heads. She uploaded it to her nearly abandoned account and logged off. Within hours, it began spreading quietly, not virally this time, but sincerely. Teachers used it in classrooms. Activists shared it in workshops. The noise machine ignored it, and maybe that was its saving grace. Weeks later, Maya walked through an art exhibit titled Truth in Turbulence. At the center stood a sculpture made from twisted airplane metal, shaped into two hands reaching toward each other, one dark, one light, neither touching. A small plaque read, inspired by Flight 417, when the sky became a mirror. Maya stood there for a long time. The crowd around her moved, whispered, took photos, but she stayed still, in her reflection on the metal. She saw herself fractured leader, victim, symbol, human. She whispered, almost to the sculpture. You tried to hold the sky accountable, but the sky always fights back. That night, in living rooms across the country, news anchors moved on. A celebrity scandal, a market crash, a war halfway across the world. Flight 417 faded from headlines. The outrage machine found new fuel. But somewhere, in quiet classrooms and late-night forums, people were still talking about bias, justice, and the strange courage of two women who dared to face the storm. Because every backlash, no matter how loud, leaves behind echoes, and sometimes those echoes are where real change begins. The morning air over Washington carried a strange calm, the kind that comes after too many storms. It had been 3 months since the flight, 1 month since the backlash died down, and 1 week since Maya had last spoken to Cheryl. Everything felt quieter, but not settled, more like the silence before the next breaking wave. Maya stepped out of the Senate building into a pale sunrise. Cameras were already waiting not for her, but for the airline CEO testifying before Congress. She looked up at the marble dome and thought, it always takes humiliation for the powerful to listen. Inside, a special committee session was underway, one she had helped convene. The title read, Corporate Responsibility and Discrimination in the Air Travel Industry. She hadn't planned to speak, but when the chair recognized her name, she rose slowly, heart steady. The CEO of Aeroworld Airlines sat stiffly under the fluorescent lights, corporate smile fixed, flanked by attorneys. Senator Jefferson, he began with practiced courtesy. Our company remains committed to diversity and fairness. Maya cut him off gently. You said the same thing 2 years ago, after the Houston incident, and the year before that, after the Boston incident. Tell me, Mr. Clark, how many committees will it take before passengers stop being judged by their skin tone before their boarding pass? Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Clark shifted in his seat. Senator, these are isolated cases, systemic patterns, Maya corrected. You call them isolated because the victims don't usually hold office. He hesitated, and that pause, broadcast live, said more than any apology ever could. Maya's voice steadied. When you deny a person dignity 30,000 feet in the air, it's not an isolated incident, it's a mirror, and this nation keeps looking away. The silence afterward was heavy, electric. The cameras caught her face, not angry, not triumphant, just resolute. Later that evening, Tanya burst into Maya's office, phone in hand. It's happening, she said breathlessly. The documents, internal Airworld memos, someone leaked them. Maya frowned. What kind of memos? On racial profiling. They trained attendants to flag high-risk passengers, coded language for Black travelers, Muslims, immigrants. Maya stared at the screen. The emails were damning. Spreadsheets, secret policy drafts, internal chat logs mocking customers. Who leaked it? She asked. Tanya hesitated. Anonymous, but it came from inside. Maya's thoughts went instantly to Cheryl. Across town, Cheryl sat in her car outside her old airline base, watching as news crews swarmed the building. She'd been quiet for weeks, no interviews, no posts, but when she saw another trainee repeating the same safety script she'd once followed, something broke. So she had sent the documents. Every line, every hidden directive. She knew what it meant. She'd never work in aviation again. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Journalists, legal investigators, activists. Emily texted Mom, did you do it? Cheryl typed back yes, because silence is complicity. She turned off her phone and drove away. By nightfall, every network ran the story. Leaked memos expose racial profiling at major airline. The same anchors who had mocked the incident now spoke with grave tones, eyes lowered. Protesters flooded airports again, this time not against Maya or Cheryl, but for reform. The airline's stock plummeted overnight. Executives resigned. Federal investigations opened. And on social media, a new tag replaced the old ones. #fly equal. No shouting, no outrage cycle. Just people sharing stories, quiet, raw, real. Maya's phone buzzed at midnight. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. Senator Jefferson, a voice said softly. Cheryl, a breath on the other end. I didn't do it for forgiveness. I just couldn't let it keep happening. I know, Maya said, but you did something brave. Cheryl laughed lightly. Brave or stupid, both, Maya admitted, but history remembers both the same way. There was silence. Then Cheryl said, you were right about something. Power protects innocence. I saw it from the inside. I used to think I was just following procedure, but that's how systems survive, through good people staying comfortable. Maya's throat tightened. Comfort is the enemy of justice. And yet, Cheryl whispered, it's what everyone wants. Maya didn't reply. She just listened to the sound of distant rain through Cheryl's phone, a soft, steady rhythm that felt like a kind of peace. Before hanging up, Cheryl said quietly, thank you for seeing me even when I was wrong. Thank you, Maya replied, for helping the world see the truth. Weeks later, a congressional reform bill passed, requiring mandatory bias training, new passenger rights, and an independent oversight board for airlines. The media called it the Jefferson Act. Maya never smiled at the name. She didn't want ownership of tragedy. At a small press briefing, she said simply, this isn't about punishment, it's about prevention. No one should have to film their own dignity to prove it exists. Applause followed. But Maya's eyes searched the crowd for something else. Understanding. In a modest classroom in Baltimore, Cheryl now worked as a part-time instructor for aviation trainees. On the whiteboard behind her, she'd written in large letters, "Safety begins with empathy." Before you check a ticket, she told her students, check your bias. Before you enforce a rule, remember who wrote it and who it protects. Her voice didn't shake anymore. The students listened, really listened. After class, Emily walked in, holding her mother's coffee. "You were great," she said. Cheryl smiled faintly. "I'm learning to fly again, just differently this time." Months later, Maya boarded another flight, incognito, in a baseball cap and scarf. No ads, no cameras, just her and a notebook. As the plane ascended through the clouds, she closed her eyes. The seatbelt clicked. The hum of engines filled the cabin. Ordinary sounds, suddenly profound. A flight attendant passed by, a young black woman. Calm, confident. She paused and smiled. "Senator Jefferson," she whispered quietly. "I just wanted to say thank you. My mother used to hide her name tag when she worked flights. I don't have to anymore." Maya felt a lump rise in her throat. "Thank you," she said softly, "for carrying it forward." The attendant moved on. Outside the window, sunlight poured through the clouds, bright, relentless, endless. Maya wrote one line in her notebook: "Justice isn't a destination, its turbulence endured long enough to change the flight path." As the plane leveled, a child's voice echoed from a few rows back. "Mom, is that the lady from TV?" A quiet laugh followed. "Yes, honey, she's the one who made them listen." Maya smiled faintly, looking out the window at the vast blue horizon. The world below was still divided, imperfect, scarred, but for the first time, the sky felt honest, as if it, too, had learned something about equality. And somewhere in that endless light, justice, fragile but alive, finally began to soar. The headlines faded, the hearings ended, the world, as it always did, moved on. But echoes have a way of surviving silence. Months after the storm, a mural appeared at Reagan National Airport. It showed two figures, abstract and intertwined, one seated, one standing, painted in shades of blue and gold. The inscription beneath read, "Every seat has a story, every story deserves respect." No one officially claimed the artwork, but travelers stopped to photograph it, to stare for a moment longer than usual before rushing to their gates. Some smiled, some frowned, and some simply stood still, wondering who had painted it, and why. On a quiet office downtown, Maya Jefferson packed her things. Her term was ending soon, and though re-election was likely, she hadn't decided whether to run again. Tanya walked in, holding a cup of tea. "You're really stepping away." Maya smiled faintly. "Not away, just elsewhere. Justice doesn't live in buildings, it lives in choices." "You sound like a quote on a poster," Tanya teased. "Maybe someone will need to read it." They hugged, and for a rare moment, Maya allowed herself to breathe, to let the years of battle and backlash ease into something gentler. As she turned to leave, she paused by the window overlooking the Capitol dome. For the first time, it didn't feel heavy, just distant, like a chapter that had done its part. Cheryl stood on a different kind of platform, not marble, but linoleum. The community center buzzed with the voices of students she now trained as part of a nonprofit flight education program. On the wall hung a poster of modern flight attendants, diverse, proud, confident. Emily handed her a clipboard. "You've got a guest today." Cheryl looked up and froze. Maya stood in the doorway, holding a single envelope. "Thought you might want to see this," she said. Inside the envelope was a printed letter, stamped with the seal of the Department of Transportation. "Dear Ms. Walker, your documentation and testimony played a crucial role in establishing new federal equity standards for the airline industry. On behalf of the department, thank you for your courage and integrity." "Secretary of Transportation, United States of America." Cheryl blinked back tears. "You didn't have to bring this yourself." Maya smiled. Some things shouldn't be sent by mail. They stood together in the center of the room, surrounded by the next generation, future attendants, pilots, engineers, faces of every color and story. "Funny," Cheryl said softly, "how the world spins. I used to think justice looked like punishment. And now," Maya asked, "now I think it looks like accountability with compassion." Maya nodded. "Then maybe we finally learned to fly right." They both laughed, tired, real laughter. Outside, the sky stretched wide and endless. Planes lifted off one after another, silverbirds carving lines through the clouds. unaware of the history their journeys carried. Somewhere up there, among those streaks of light, were passengers who would never know the story of Flight 417 but who, because of it, would board a little more freely, move a little more safely, be treated a little more humanly. And maybe that was enough. Because true justice rarely announces itself with fanfare or vengeance. It lands quietly in changed hearts, rewritten policies, and small acts of grace repeated until they no longer need to be noticed. As the final plane disappeared into the horizon, Maya's voice lingered, not as a sound, but as a truth. The sky was never divided. But every time we faced the storm, it learns to let a little more light through. The wind carried that light onward, across airports, across borders, across years, a reminder that even in a world still learning how to rise, some flights change the course of the air itself.